In this video, I'm going to look at Viltrox AF 16mm f1.8. We all like surprises, and this Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF for full frame was a big one. We previously reviewed the Viltrox 85mm 1.8 AF Mark I and Mark II, and they were solid performers while being very affordable. But this 16mm 1.8 sounds way more spectacular on paper than an ordinary 85mm 1.8 lens, and it even comes with some technology we haven't seen anywhere else. Let's have a closer look. You can see a text-based version of this review written by Bastian, who originally tested this lens on our blog site. I put the link in the description below. This lens was tested on a 42MP Sony a7R Mark II. Sample images were taken by Bastian and myself with a Sony a7 Mark III and a Nikon ZF. Most of the sample images in this review can be found in full resolution on a separate site. I put the link in the description below as well. I would like to thank Viltrox that kindly provided this lens free of charge for reviewing and testing purposes, handling and build quality. In terms of controls, this Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF offers everything a Sony GM and later G series lenses offer. The focus ring has OK damping, but a non-linear coupling. This means when rotating it slowly, it takes about 180 degrees from the minimum focus distance, which is 0.27 meter, to infinity. But if you turn it very fast, it can even take up to 1080 degrees for that. When you turn the camera off, the lens will remember the last focus position and will still be there when you turn the camera on again. The aperture ring has 1/3 of a stop-click stops, which you can declick by using a lever on the right side of the lens. You can also set the ring to A for automatic and let the camera choose the aperture value, or use the camera dial to change the aperture value instead of using the aperture ring. The aperture ring feels very similar to the Sony FE 20mm f1.8G that we reviewed lately, actually slightly better even. On the left side of the lens there are two buttons, FN1 and FN2, an AF MF switch. In AF mode, FN1 works as focus hold button by default, but you can change it to whatever you want it to do in the camera. FN2 button has no function here. In MF mode, you can toggle between two preset distances when pressing the FN2 button. What is a novelty is the LCD display on the top of the lens. While the Zeiss Batis lenses also had such a display, they were not half as useful as this one. This one shows the following information: depth of field scale, focus hold when activated, AF MF mode, preset distance setting A and B, focus distance, aperture value. I think those preset distance settings can be really useful for focusing in the dark at true infinity for astrophotography, or for easily setting the hyperfocal distance should you be relying on that. Undoubtedly, this is all exciting, but how reliable is this information? I decided to do a simple test. I took a good old measuring tape, placed the camera exactly 1 meter from my red Porsche, and autofocus the lens. Let's try at 2 meters. Okay then, 5 meters then. I also tested focusing on the Porsche at a 10-meter distance. Out of 20 attempts, it could display 10 meters 6 times only, with other readings ranging from 8 to 8.9 meters. At this rate, they might as well claim that the lens can make coffee for you. In other words, it's definitely nothing you can rely on. There is a rubber sealing gasket and a USB-C socket for firmware upgrade on the metallic mounting plate. The barrel seems to be made from high-quality polycarbonate plastic, and all markings on the lens barrel are engraved and filled with paint. The markings on the front retention ring seem to be only printed though. The lens hood is the typical bayonet type made from plastic. It's made from two pieces, and at first it looks like those of the GM lenses with rubber front bumper, but it's not the case. The lens looks and feels well made. No unsightly seams in the casing, as we have seen in the early Tamron FE lenses, and generally better than earlier Samyang lenses. I have only used this lens for a few weeks, so I cannot tell you anything about its longevity. The Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF is noticeably bigger than the Laowa 15mm f2.0, but only 40 grams heavier. This is because Laowa is using more metal for its casing. The autofocus is very fast, perfectly usable and silent, except for a slight humming noise as long as the camera with the lens is turned on. Now to the optical features. Normally, very high vignetting figures are expected when it comes to fast ultra-wide-angle lenses, but this Viltrox still shows about 0.5 EV higher vignetting at its widest aperture compared to the Laowa 15mm 2 and the Sony FE 14mm 1.8 GM. Stop down, the values are similar to the Laowa 15mm 2.0 and about stop higher than those of Sony FE 14mm 1.8 GM. The best in class results here is from Sigma 14mm 1.8 Art. That shows only 2.3 EV at its maximum aperture and even improves to a mere 0.4 EV stopped down. But that's also a huge and heavy DSLR lens that is not really fun to use on a mirrorless camera. It should also be noted that the vignetting figures of this Viltrox lens are not higher at shared apertures than those of the much slower 7 Artisans 15mm 4.0, Nisi 15mm 4.0. Sharpness near infinity mark. The Viltrox 16mm 1.8 MTF graphs promises really good across-the-frame performance from 1.8, and I surely was a bit skeptical when I saw them, despite this lens's complex optical design. But the performance is very good indeed. There is a small mid-zone dip for resolution, but the contrast is great across the frame from 1.8. The corners also benefit from stopping down to f2.8, but I wouldn't mind using this lens at f1.8 whenever necessary. The mid-zone dip of my copy of Laowa 15mm 2.0 is a bit stronger, and its corners also don't look as contrasty, so Viltrox did a really good job here. I would need to review the Sony FE 14mm 1.8 GM first to see how they compare, but 14mm and 16mm are also a pretty big difference, so this would not really be an apples to apples comparison anyway. Sharpness at close-up distances. This Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF does not focus as close as the Laowa 15mm 2.0 or the Nisi 15mm 4.0, but it surely makes up for that with its amazing image quality at its own minimum focusing distance, which is 0.27 meter. Ultra-wide-angle lenses like this one have issues with field curvature at close focusing distance. This is true for the Laowa 15mm 2.0, the 7 Artisans 15mm 4.0, the Nisi 15mm 4.0, and Samyang 18mm 2.8, and plenty more. But this is not the case with this Viltrox lens. The field is perfectly flat, even at 0.27 meter, and with the lens set to f1.8, pretty astonishing. Here is a picture taken with the Laowa 15mm 2.0 for comparison. Flare resistance. As always, evaluating flare is a complex matter since you can get any lens to look bad if you push it hard enough, and a slight change of scenario can affect results a lot. With a strong light source in the frame, you can easily catch artifacts like shown here. At wider apertures, there is a subtle ring flare. At 1.8, it is barely noticeable because of the higher vignetting, but it becomes very noticeable when you stop down. By f11, also a line of green ghosts become more obvious. Unfortunately, sometimes I only discovered these artifacts later on the computer, like in this example. Comma. One of the main applications for a lens with these parameters is landscape astrophotography, and here good comma correction is of notable importance. At the maximum aperture of f1.8, some comma is visible in the corners, and this will also be visible with bright stars in these parts of the frame. Stop down to f2.8, the performance is really good though. This Viltrox at f1.8 performs better than Laowa 15mm 2.0 at f2.0, but the differences are even bigger at f2.8 and at f4. This Viltrox looks similar to the Sony FE 14mm 1.8 GM that I haven't tested personally yet, but plan on doing it soon. Lens distortion. The Viltrox AF 16mm 1.8 shows a low amount of wavy distortion. As for most Viltrox lenses, a Lightroom profile is available. Bokeh. Not usually a playing field for ultra-wide-angle lenses, but at f1.8 maximum aperture, in combination with the 0.27 meter minimum focusing distance, allows for some pretty spectacular composition with nicely blurred backgrounds. The bokeh quality is actually really good. And in combination with the great sharpness at close distances, this made me enjoy taking close-up shots with this lens more than I thought I would. You cannot really blur the background of bigger objects. The background of these chandeliers looks barely out of focus at normal viewing distances. You would need to get really close or have it printed pretty big to notice it actually is. Sun stars. Normally an even number of aperture blades leads to distinct sun stars, whereas this Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF is using 9 aperture blades. The alignment of the blades is pretty good though, and we see nice sun stars from f5.6 to f16, similar to those we have seen from the Sony FE 20mm 1.8G. The Voigtländer ultra-wide-angle lenses, as well as the later Laowa ones, and also the 7 Artisans 15mm 4.0 and Nisi 15mm 4.0 show more distinct 10-pointed sun stars though. Chromatic aberrations. Many ultra-wide-angle lenses show strong lateral CA, but this is not the case here. What remains is easily corrected by one click in, for example, Lightroom or Photoshop. Given the complex optical design, which includes no fewer than 4 ED elements, I expected a strong performance in this category, and the lens delivers. Neither bokeh fringing nor purple fringing are present in typical shooting conditions. However, upon close inspection, there is a slight amount of longitudinal chromatic aberration. It's minimal, unobtrusive, and hardly noticeable, especially for an ultra-wide-angle lens, but it is there. And now to the conclusion. The good things are sharpness anywhere in the frame at all distances, comma correction from f2.8, pleasing bokeh, chromatic aberration correction, sun stars, handling and build quality, LCD display and useful additional features, standard 77mm filter thread, and the price. Things that are not bad but not are so good either are the distortion control and the weight. Things I don't like are flare resistance, strong vignetting at f1.8 to f2.0, and the size of the lens. When it comes to the Chinese lens manufacturers, so far the one with the most advanced products has been Laowa. They were the only ones that were able to create really unique and very complex optically as well as mechanically lenses that you couldn't find from any other manufacturers. The 9mm 5.6, 15mm 2.0, 28mm 1.2 and 35mm 0.95 lenses are only a few examples for this. But in my opinion, this Viltrox 16mm 1.8 AF is a real game changer. In almost every category, it improves upon the over 15mm 2.0, but not just that, it adds a competitive modern AF system and the most useful and advanced controls found on any lens. While doing all this, it even undercuts the Laowa's prices. The 7 Artisans 15mm 4 and Nisi 15mm 4 look like completely outdated dinosaurs next to this Viltrox lens. Points of criticism are scarce. The vignetting is high at f1.8 to f2, but this was probably a trade-off necessary by avoiding bulbous front element and allowing for easy use of standard filters. Flare resistance could be better, but considering the competitors' performances and the Viltrox's more complex 15 elements design, this might actually be asking too much here. And this isn't a small lens by any means. To me, it was only a matter of time before the Chinese lens manufacturers start to outdo the Japanese ones, and this lens might be where it begins. I don't know how the people at Viltrox did it, but they got a lot of things right here. As mentioned earlier, this review is also available in written format on our blog site, where you will find detailed test charts on sharpness and other characteristics. There is also a list of a few alternatives at the end of the article for those interested. A link to the blog post is included in the description below. Huge thanks for watching. Any comments are most welcome. If you liked this video, give it the thumbs up, and for more content like this, please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Until the next video, have a fantastic time everyone.